knew even before today's results release that Telkom would have to talk about how billions were lost to corruption. Eskom, yes. Sorry.
Yes, indeed. No surprises there.
No surprises really there. But what was interesting for me was how then, having said all the right things, about them turning the place around, shaking the cupboard, as it were, for the skeletons to come out, then with a great deal of emphasis, the Telkom chair then says, but there's a point at which we will have to draw the line.
The real thing about that, Vuyo, is that Eskom is 95 years old, and corruption started at Eskom 95 years ago. So the new management coming in, trying to root out the corruption, which really went through the roof in the last 4 years in particular, you have to make a decision as to how far back you go in restating the numbers and checking if everything was done as it should have. So they made a decision and they went to 2012. There may very well be another opportunity to go even further back. How far they go is a different story altogether. The real matter is the organization being fixed from now onwards?
Well, that's what I want us to talk about, but before we do that, just on the back of what you've just said, because there are now a lot of conspiracy theories that are saying 2012, there's something deliberate about that because you want to make somebody look bad and other people who have come subsequently like to look good. Should we even entertain that?
Look, Eskom can answer that for themselves, exactly what informed starting in that particular year. I suppose you're talking about politics now, so let's entertain that. The government of Jacob Zuma came in 2009. If they had gone as far back as 2009, which is 10 years, you would have people saying, why only 2009? Why not 1994? I've opened by saying they could have gone as far back as 95 years if they wanted. So Eskom can answer that for themselves. What you do have to know, though, is that to audit the company and do these investigations takes time and money. At some point, they had to come and report to the people of South Africa, which they have done. If there's appetite, the board of Eskom, I'm sure, can do listen. The government and the public enterprises minister can respond to that. They can themselves tell you why they only started in 2012.
Let's talk now about the future then. What needs to happen, next. Among the announcements or pronouncements today was the CEO saying that they are going to lay charges against your Trillians and McKinsey's. How is that? How important is that?
They have already laid charges against this company, Trillian and McKinsey. And they've laid a total of 11 criminal complaints with the police and the Hawks since January. And we know that before that there were criminal charges. But now, having done that and provided the evidence that does support those charges, it's up to the state, it's up to the police, it's up to the prosecution services, which we do know, of course, they have not at all been entrusted. Nothing shows me they have changed their minds. The management can only then respond to what the police say. Like, okay, we need one other document to tie up some loose ends, or we're taking these guys to court, we are arresting them, you need to come and testify before court. That is outside of the management of Eskom. What Eskom then needs to do inside, and I do have confidence that they are doing it, is to put in place, and that's not going to be just like that, is to put in place measures and structures to prevent this sort of thing happening ever again. And that is the harder part. But even harder is to recover the funds. They have recovered only 900 million rands from McKinsey. McKinsey was paid 1.6 billion rand and it shared the other with Trillian. Of course, McKinsey would like us to interpret that differently. The fact of the matter is McKinsey made Eskom pay 1.6 billion rand. They still owe us interest on that amount of money, which is now at this point 360 million rand. So it's to recover what was stolen and make sure people get prosecuted, but most importantly, make sure the people that remain inside Eskom don't get tempted to do this again because there's impunity, no one gets held accountable. There's not even an arrest. And that, again, is the function of the state in which we are. That's the job of the police in South Africa, who only prosecute crime.
Now, we've been told over and over again that Eskom is too big and too important to fail. Now, apart from the charges brought against certain people and putting in place systems that will ensure that these sorts of things don't happen again, as you have just said, what else then needs to be done to ensure that, it's really foolproof? In other words, Eskom's place in the country is actually affirmed. Not only that, but that all the systems speak to all the interests of all the stakeholders, including the consumer.
So we've spoken about operations, which is management, what the company must do itself. What you are now talking about is policy, and policy is set at the government level. And that policy needs to bring in competition, because competition can really be good for anyone, including Eskom. Should you bring in other players to build power stations, be they from whatever system, coal, wind, even nuclear, let that be built and operated by a different entity to compete with Eskom. You will have a central buyer of energy. This is not new. It's been in the plan, but politics got in the way. That's the only way you make sure that Eskom does not get too big to fail, because right now there's no alternative, and that is the biggest problem. But Eskom itself cannot make that happen. It's the government's role to do that, to implement its own policies.
Well, among the criticisms that have been leveled against Eskom as it is currently is that, one, it's got way too many people than it is supposed to carry, and that is part of the problem.
Eskom has been used, I've said this on many occasions, Eskom has been used, particularly over the past 10 years, as an employment agency by the government. Eskom's job is to generate power and do so sustainably, not necessarily profitably, but sustainably. But what has happened is that you and I and the people of South Africa have been paying, handing over cash to Eskom and making them inefficient. So when they could not, when the economy could not create jobs, they went and said, Eskom employs 16,000 more people, to such that now Eskom has got exactly that kind of problem. It has to cut jobs in order to go back to what it can be, in order to sustain itself, so that they don't have to go to the National Electricity Regulator for money. They don't have to go ask the finance minister for cash. They have to operate the system themselves without us getting involved, except for paying what we've used.
Of course, you have the workers saying, no, it's not us. It's not about the people who are employed. It's the mismanagement.
The workers are definitely not guilty of inflating the workforce. It is the management and the politicians. However, the management needs to sort it out, and the only way to sort it out is to reduce those jobs. So the workers, of course, cannot be expected to just roll over and say, fire us. They will fight back. And the unions, they are there to safeguard the interests of the workers, and the only thing they can do is ensure they get better employment conditions.